Howdy, and welcome to the White Hat Law Show with Warren Nord, where we cover a mix of current events, politics, and the law. Take it away, Warren.
Welcome to White Hat Law. My name is Warren Norrit with Norrit Law, and I've got with me today Chad Lampe, who handles a lot of business entity issues in our office. And so today we're going to be talking about what you're going to need to do if you have an idea and a patent and you're going to do all these other things. Before you get started with all the business adventures, you need to have a business entity. What is a business entity, Chad?
A business entity would be something like an LLC, a corporation, even a nonprofit, something that's put together to provide a liability shield, and that's really the main purpose of entities, at least as we see as when folks come into our office, we want something put in place so once you start doing business, if you're sued, you're not going to lose all of your personal assets.
Liability Shield. So what is this Liability Shield again?
Well, for example, if you form an LLC, you'll start doing business and signing your contracts as the LLC. You're gonna stop signing your name as Joe Smith. A lot of people come in, they've been doing just a sole proprietor. I guess a lot of people think, well, they come in, they say, hey, my question to them is, do you have an entity? Yeah, I filed an assumed name certificate. Well, you don't have an entity. All you did is went down to Tarrant County or whatever county you're living in. You filed an assumed name certificate, and you're still personally liable for all of the things that you're doing. If you enter into a contract with somebody and you breach it, they're still going to sue you individually. They're not suing your company. Now, if you went and you filed a certificate of formation with the Secretary of State and you formed a limited liability company, then you entered a contract in with somebody, then they sue the entity instead of suing you. Now, you may get sued personally anyways, but that's a different conversation. But the whole purpose is to attack the assets of the LLC and not your personal stuff. So if they do get a judgment, they're not coming after your wave runner, they're coming after whatever assets may happen to be in the LLC.
So you're saying a DBA is not a company?
No, a DBA is not a company. It's just a name that you can put on your business cards and on your storefront so people will identify that. If you have, Jill's Flower Shop, you're not going to do business as Jill Smith. It's just an assumed name, so you can use it.
People can write checks to you.
People can write checks to you. You can form a, Jill's Flower Shop. Put it, www.com.
Now, of course, I'm asking about that because we have people that come in sometimes and they say, I've got a business and the business name is Jill's Flower Shop, and then we look at it and we find that they've only got a DBA. In that situation, what would you suggest they do?
Well, I would say, hey, it's time to probably think about getting an LLC and start that process. Now, you still may be able to use Jill's Flower Shop, but if you have some very common name like that, you may not be able to get your LLC named that. So what we may want to do is think of something a little more creative that's just merely descriptive, like Jill's Flower Shop, and come up with a better name, if that's something that they want to do. Now, if somebody comes in and they've been using a name, they can't get, because somebody in Texas already has an LLC, a way around that sometimes is filing an assumed name certificate with the state and with the county. So you could have a very boring LLC name like,
My favorite is Doctor's Associates, which of course owns Subway. People don't recognize that.
Right.
Nobody who knows what Doctor's Associates is, but everybody knows Subway.
Right.
And so we've had clients that had very droll names, and
I've had one come in. I had one who wanted a principaled property tax, and that was taken. So we ended up doing Chicken and Biscuits LLC, and that LLC is still active today. And so when he gives his forms for taxes at the end of the year, people always double take because he's in the tax business. But his that's what he did. He formed it under one name, but operates under a different name.
Well, okay. So then if I'm going to do a doing business as a DBA, I'm going to file it somewhere. Do I file it at the county or the state, or do I care? Does it matter?
Yeah, it does matter. You file it in the state and with the Secretary of State, and you also file it in the any county where the main office of the business is. So if you're in Tarrant County, you'd file in Tarrant County. If your corporate office is in Dallas, you would file it there. You don't need to file one in every county, only the county with office.
Why would I do one in Austin then with the state if I can do one in the county?
Well, you do both. It's a requirement.
What if I only do one in the capital? What if I just want the Secretary of State?
Well, then you may have somebody locally come and put it, use it in the county that you're in.
We've gone
Now,
on and on
and-
about this because it
and
happens a lot.
Right, and
Yeah.
and I've noticed that counties are typically more, they'll actually filter them, so you can actually get stuff rejected by Tarrant County. I've seen it where they reject it because somebody already has that assumed name. But the Secretary of State, you can file assumed name certificates all day long, whatever name you want, and it's just a ministerial act for them to accept that filing. Now, you're going to get the repercussions if somebody finds it and says, hey, you're using my assumed name, but they will accept your filing.
What if I've got a domain name, a URL that it's jillsflowershop.com? Doesn't that mean that I've got a business or LLC or something?
No. You actually have to file a certificate of formation with the state or articles of incorporation if you want to form an Inc. Not too many people file Incs these days, just because the preferred entity of choice since the past probably 10 years has been a limited liability company.
I noticed that it's now a limited liability company, not a limited liability corporation.
Right, and this is when we get into a thing where words mean things. People come in and say, hey, my partner and I are wanting to do this. And we say, okay, what do you mean by partner? Do you have a general partnership? Or do you have an LLC, and are you members of an LLC? Oh, we have an LLC. So we often have to tell people to hey, words mean things, and if you're going out and telling somebody that this is my partner, they may think that they're dealing with a general partnership. There's liability reasons for different. If you're in a general partnership, each general partner is liable for everybody else. In an LLC, right, only the LLC is liable. So it's important that you identify, hey, I'm a member, I'm the manager, I'm the managing member, president, that's fine, but that's kind of an important little practice point.
So how would I refer to a fellow member? I just call them.
Become a member. That person's a member. They could also be a manager and not a member. And then we get into, hey, what kind of LLC? How do I want this structured? When you file your LLC, you can have it either manager managed or you can have it member managed. And this is a pitfall that we see when people do these online things where you can go, because they come into our office and they may say, well, I want to do, we tell them what it would cost. And they don't want to pay that because people have the idea that they can do it for free. It's online. You can do everything free, everything online, and you can do form an LLC online by yourself or through one of these things. But then you have things come up with. We had a person who was on the phone running their business. Their manager of their restaurant was on phone with this certain online provider of services, and they said, well, what is your title? And this person said, I'm the manager. So that person got put on as a manager of the entity, even though that person was just simply a manager of the store. So with this, that person took a copy of the certificate of formation to a local bank and proceeded to take money, open up an account, take money out, all that kind of stuff. This person's background wasn't the greatest. It's not somebody you want to be in business with. May have had some trouble in the law in the past.
So what you're saying is you don't want everybody to. There may be pitfalls with choosing an online provider to help you form an entity.
Right, and in that case, it wasn't an easy fix because the person who had organized the company. You have to have an organizer when you form an LLC. In the case when a client comes to us, we're the organizer. So if we need to go back and make a change, we need to change the name of a member. Maybe there was a typo. Whatever reason that needs to change, the organizer can make those initial changes to the certificate of formation. So in that instance, we couldn't go back and just remove this person. She had to go back to that other online entity, find out whoever the person was.
So what you're saying is an online entity has a number of people, probably all on a cube farm, answering these phones and just taking the information and filling it out, and not necessarily, in fact, they say we're not giving legal advice. So they're just helping you fill out these forms. And if something goes wrong, then the legal term, I think, is hosed.
Yeah, well, or you have to go find that person to resubmit it for you because the Secretary of State's not going to accept it without their signature. And it's somebody that you shouldn't even want associated with your company that now is, holding you basically hostage.
Anything else that people need to understand? I mean, I generally tell people, friends don't let friends use online impersonal services. But is there anything in particular that's popped up that also happens with those kinds of situations?
With the entity formation, you're going to you may get a generic company agreement. It may not fit your circumstance. You being an intellectual property lawyer, we oftentimes get inventors and stuff that come in, and these people are constantly creating stuff. And if they were to go to just use the cookie cutter or whatever it is that's typed off there, it may not be able to fit all their needs. We've had instances where we want to, for example, tailor rights of first refusal into an agreement. So if somebody comes up with an idea, they can present it to the LLC. The LLC has X amount of time to say yay or nay, and then they can move on. Well, that's just an example of the kinds of things that need to be in the company agreement on the front end. And that's another thing, is a lot of people, you need to have a company agreement.
What is a company agreement?
So a company agreement is between the members of the LLC on how everything's going to go. There's a lot of stuff in there that things may not come up for a long time, events of death, events of divorce. It describes voting rights, but it can also put in, who's entitled, of course, to what percentage. Are there going to be any certain weird kind of salaries? It can cover a lot of ground if you have somebody drafted for what your needs are. And so that's the thing, is going in before an attorney and saying, hey, here are some things we want accomplished. But this agreement is on the front end, right? So there's been, I guess one of the pitfalls is people forming an LLC, paying $300 to Secretary of State, putting everybody's name on the certificate of formation, and then all of a sudden, years down the road, there's no agreement. And they may be blowing and going, making money. Everybody's happy. And then they get sued. Well, what's the company agreement say it happens? Well, then it turns into a giant fight. There's been folks that come in and that kind of situation, and they've gone through several attorneys getting company agreements made, and no one wants to sign the dotted line. Usually because there's also a part on there for the spouse to sign, and that raises some problems in the family.
Yeah, we've got a favorite client I know that there are 4 of them, and they're all making money, and they have no company agreement. And we've warned them, and we're going to warn them right now online, that sooner or later there may be a discussion where it falls apart, and there's no easy way to resolve how these things go because there's been no agreement, and everybody is always suspicious of everybody else. Once you've gotten down the road, it's hard to get these things
right. And the thing is, it's cheaper on the front end. In that kind of thing, it's gonna, if there's a dispute, tens of thousands of dollars by everybody to pay attorneys to possibly undo a mess. On the front end, currently, it's about $1,500 to get a LLC and a company agreement put together, get everything rolling.
That's in 2017, toward the end.
Right.
That number may change in the future.
Right. Always subject to change, and that's kind of this year entry. If you come in, the more complex it gets, then
with 4 members, and they all have spouses, and they all want to go back and forth 15 times, and it's going to be different than if it's a person by themselves. Right. So, if I come to NORAD Law and I want to form a business entity, what questions are you going to ask that they need to be able to answer?
Well, I'm going to ask, who are going to be the members? A lot of folks come in, especially if they come in onesies, and I ask them, are you married? Are you planning on your spouse being a member? And sometimes they haven't thought about that. Sometimes they say, oh yeah, well, it'll be 50%. Do they want to format? Do they want to make it so it's a minority-owned business? Are they planning on doing any government contracts? There could be some reasons to do that. Is it going to be a solely owned veteran business? There's questions like that. We'll need to know names and addresses of who's going to be involved, whether there's going to be some people that are managers and not members. Who wants to be the president, treasurer, and secretary? Those are the 3 required officer positions within an LLC. The address of the company, that kind of stuff. It's nothing extremely complicated, but the big thing is that if you have more than one person, there's probably going to be some specific to their I don't know what I'm trying to say, that can get the words out to their situation.
Right.
Things that, hey, what type of business are you doing? For example, are you inventing stuff? Things there that we need to look at of, okay, well, how are you operating? Are you planning on doing this? Are you planning on bringing in other members down the road?
Are you going to be franchising this? Or are you going to be a franchisee?
Right.
And so lots of things that go into that. And then we've had people come in every once in a while and they say, well, I got this letter from the comptroller that says that I no longer have an LLC because I failed to provide some kind of document.
So that's a super easy way to get your right to transact business in Texas, is to ignore mailings from the Texas comptroller. Every year they send out a notice that you need to pay your franchise tax or file your no tax due report and file a public information report. A lot of people, they see this thing, it has a very nondescript Texas comptroller. What's the comptroller? They throw it in the thing, and when the registered agent will get the notice. So if the client is the registered agent, then they will get the notice. So if they're getting the notice and not paying attention, well, after a certain amount of time, they will put you on. They will forfeit your right to transact business in the state of Texas. Now, a really bad thing what happens is that happens because you ignore it for a few years, you keep doing business, and then somebody comes in and takes the name of your LLC while you were gone because you're still operating this, the LLC still owns assets, and now there's somebody out there with your LLC name. That happens with kind of regular frequency. And it's one of the simple things that, I mean, it literally takes a few minutes to file the 2 forms. And it's just a super easy way to lose an LLC. Now, we do have people that come in and they're startups and they say, well, I want to do it with this company. We'll get that notice a year later and we'll send it to them and say, oh, I'm just going to let it die. I mean, that's your prerogative if you just want to spend money and just throw away money, but you still have an entity, even if you're not using it. Why let it go away? You can use it for something else down the road. Just keep your filings up to date.
Well, people think that sometimes it's a lot of money. It's $0 just to fill it out and send it in.
Correct.
Right. I mean,
Yeah,
unless you're making real money.
If you miss the deadline, it's like a $50 filing fee, or the comptroller charges, but it's nothing that's burdensome.
But if somebody comes in and NORAD Law does the filing for them, then we would be their registered agent?
We have. That's a service that we do offer if they choose. Some people choose to do it and some people don't.
Right.
And what you can expect from that, what people say, well, what's a registered agent? A registered agent is somebody that receives, if you ever sued, they're going to receive a service of process. That address is kept with the Secretary of State. So they look the company up, and that's who the lawsuit's going to get showed to. You're also going to get really cool things in the mail, like American Express mailings and ADT.
You can go into debt.
Yeah, and all these kind of things. Your registered agent is going to receive that mail. So we usually ask our clients, hey, do you want this stuff? You want us to send it to you? And the majority, the 100% of the time, yeah, you can just trash that kind of thing. The mailings.
People sometimes say, I want to keep my members secret. I want to keep all the things I do secret so nobody can see. What do you tell people when they ask that?
Well, we can we can bury some stuff through entities. A LLC can be a membership in a different LLC. So you can make it hard to find somebody's membership interest if they're a member. At some point, it's going to be reported somewhere, and someone with enough sleuthing is going to find out that you have an interest in the LLC. But
there's partnerships, though.
There's partnerships. You could have, you can have a general partnership, be a member or a manager of an LLC. There's ways to make it difficult for somebody to find you.
So what you're saying is they should come in and talk to you about that. And
yeah, it's going to be a case-by-case scenario. There's no, hey, how do I do this? And we're going to have to talk and figure that out.
And the last question I get all the time is, if I want to sell my business or buy a business, what do I need to do? What does that cost? And what are the pitfalls of doing it myself?
Well, what it's going to cost is it depends, because that all depends on the size of it. I mean, if you're a big company, then you're going to get into SEC stuff. There are sometimes people say, well, I want to sell my company. It's like, well, and it comes in, they're just selling off their stuff. They're not really selling their LLC. They just want to sell off the assets. So that's kind of a different animal, which is more common, I've noticed. A lot of times people, they want to keep the entity and the person just wants to buy the trucks and the little bit of inventory that's there and the website, that kind of stuff. So the pitfalls of that is that, hey, well, what if I do it by myself? I can do this on a one-pager. Well, then you get into stuff like, okay, cool. Well, you just sold your business, and did you talk to your landlord? Or did you make arrangements to get out of your 20-year lease that you signed? Are they going to allow this other person to come in there? How they check the creditworthiness of this buyer? Are there any serialized stuff? Is there stuff that with titles, cars, trucks? Have you thought about that? Do you need to transfer all that stuff over as well? Anything with UCC1 filings on them that, hey, a secured creditor might have a huge interest to know that you're trying to sell. So a lot of people think that, hey, I want to do this on the cheap, and you end up selling a piece of equipment that has a UCC1 filing on it, and you just bought yourself a lawsuit. So those are generally the kinds of things we see.
Yeah, I guess the moral of the story is that the attorney that would help you during an initial consultation and just a simple examination of what's going on is a lot cheaper than the lawsuit that's going to follow whenever you don't do it right.
Right. Yeah, even coming into talking about it, we typically charge $75 for a consultation, and I think it's way underpriced for the amount of information you can get out of that. Some people heed it and some people don't, and that's just, you make the bed, you lie in the bed you make. But yeah, with I think anything in the legal world, it's typically always cheaper on the front end. In entity formation, you may have to put a little bit out of money on the beginning, but if you go into business and you don't have these things in place, if you go into start business and you get sued, and now they're coming after your personal stuff, and you've got a, your house,
a red house,
3 rental properties, and a sweet bass boat. Well, guess what? That's gone. That's in danger now. So it's a very small investment on the front end for a future of your company.
Well, thank you, Chad. And for all of that, and when we come back, we're going to have one of my favorite franchisors in with us, Roy Upshaw of Taco Casa. Be right back.
Hang on, y'all. More with Warren when we get back. Welcome back, folks. You're listening to the White Hat Law Show with Warren Norrid. Take it away, Warren.
Welcome back. Again, I'm Warren Norrid, White Hat Law. Today we're talking about franchises. And as we're talking about franchises, I thought I'd bring in Roy Upshaw. Roy has been involved and owner of the Taco Casa franchise for a couple of years. And so I thought I'd have him in, and he's opted to join us and concede to my request. So welcome to the show, Roy.
Well, thank you.
And how long ago did you start Taco Casa?
1972.
1972.
Garland, Texas.
And Garland. So if I do the math, we're a little over 45 years, something like
Correct.
that. Yeah. Well, tell us about those early days. Did you personally start Taco Casa, or did you have a manager that did all the work? Or?
Yeah, me and my wife and kids, we moved from Memphis to Garland in 1972, and we were going to buy another Taco Bell. We owned some Taco Bells there, and we were going to buy another Taco Bell. And here in Dallas-Fort Worth, we fell in love with Dallas-Fort Worth, and they didn't want to sell us one because they already sold out. They were selling real fast, and so we decided we was going to do our own thing, and so I opened Taco Casa in 1972.
And how many franchisees do you have today? How many stores do you have today?
We have about 78 stores right now in operation. About 5 or 6 in Oklahoma. The rest of them are in Texas.
And of course, one of the reasons people are kind of tuning in today is they want to know, what does it take to be a successful franchisee? When they come to you and they say, I want to have a Taco Casa, what does that mean? What do they have to do?
Well, most of the time, to be successful, it takes a lot of work and a lot of dedication, and that's what it took with us. We worked real hard. I moved from San Diego to Lubbock to Memphis. Well, actually, I went to South Bend, Indiana for a year, and then we went to Memphis, Tennessee, and then we moved back to Texas. So opportunity each time we moved, but nobody has to do that anymore, really. It's Dallas-Fort Worth's such a good country that that it's pretty successful, and pretty easy in Dallas-Fort Worth. But it takes dedication, and it takes it just takes somebody that that wants to make money and love the product, and we pride ourselves in doing a good job of that. That's our main object, is to serve a great product, and so far it's word of mouth's been a very, very good commercial for us.
Well, I noticed I was on your website not too long ago, and there's a part of the website that says if you want to be a Taco Casa franchisee, and it almost tries to talk you out of it. I mean, it doesn't make it sound like it's a fun job.
Well, I worked a lot of hours when I was in Memphis and South Bend and Lubbock and in San Diego. I mean, I felt like I was the only one that could do it, and I was afraid to let anybody else do it. And so I wanted people to realize that that it wasn't something where you just put up your money and go fishing and wait for the money to come in. And I wanted people to be hands-on, mom and pop type deal, where where it really pays off to do that. Any business does. I mean, if you don't show up, that's the words, that's the successful words, is showing up. If you don't show up, you're not going to be successful unless you just get real lucky, and so I want to impress that on everybody that, that doesn't, and that's why it says that on my website, that's why I put it there on my website, just so people would realize that, that it demands your time, and it demands, and that's what we want. We want homegrown people in there that fall in love with the product, and, if they don't like it, they need to not stick around, they need to go find something else if it's not their thing,
Now, whenever somebody comes to you and they say, I want to be a franchise or a franchisee, do you help them set up the location, or they have the location handy, or how does that work?
Well, now at this point in time, we've got so many stores in Fort Worth that it's pretty well sold out. So what I do first thing is I want them to commit to move to the city. Like if they're gonna say, well, okay, I'll go to San Antonio. Well, I want them to move there and live in that town. I don't want an absentee owner. I'm not like most companies. Most companies will take your money. They don't care if you're, worth $100 million. They'll take your money and make you build, 20 or 30 stores a year and get commitments from you, which I've never done that. We've always been very, very laid back on forcing people to do things. We don't force anybody to do anything. If they just want one store, that's fine, that's perfect. If they want 2 or 3 stores, if they qualify, if they've got a good organization, then we work with them, and and I help them out. I'm hands-on. I do the real estate with them. I advise them, and they listen most of the time, and it pays off in the long run. I mean,
Do you typically own the land, or do they own the land, or is it a mixed bag, or is it?
It depends on their financial situation. They can do a build-a-suit, and I negotiate with the landlords on that. I help them out as much as possible because I've had a lot of experience in it. And if they don't get a good deal up front, well, they're going to be in trouble later on. And so I want them to be financially, in good shape. I don't want them to I'm just not out here to build a bunch of stores and then sell to, the public or whatever, I mean, I want everybody to be successful. I don't want to have, I don't want to open 50 stores a year and close 10 of them,
Right.
I want it to be successful, and so I make sure that they understand that. When they leave, they're shaking their heads sometimes because they go, wow, I don't know if he really wants us to be a franchisee or not. But if they come back, and I mean, it takes persistence, on me. I'm not a big corporation that just takes the money and puts you on a list.
Well, let's talk about that for a minute. In the last segment, you heard us talk about business entities. Do you require that your franchisees have a business entity?
No, if they have another business, I prefer that they sell it, or that they, I'm very partial to my business. I
Sure.
want them to be Taco Casa. If they've got another chicken franchise or a hamburger franchise or something like that, a lot of people have that, and I don't really like to mix them because it's just not real friendly, because we're always looking at things that are not, kosher with, hamburgers and tacos, it's a totally different thing, and chicken and, whatever, pizza, it all, gets mumbled up, and people don't understand things, and so it always causes confusion. So I always tell them, hey, look, I want you to be loyal to Taco Casa and the brand, or don't do it at all, stay with what you got.
Now, of course, you've been in the franchise business, more than 4 decades. Is that what other franchises are like, or some franchises are kind of, hey, whatever, we don't really care, just give us the money and set it all up?
Most of them I think that I see are that way. I mean, the successful ones are ones that have a organization that helps you out, and and that's very important. And that's what you're paying me a royalty for. You're paying me. I go to work for you. I'm your employee. I become your employee because you send me a check every month, and I take that money and I go, wow, I'm going to keep working for this man so he can keep sending me that check. And that's very important to the whole company. It makes things work, and then it makes them successful because I work for them. I make contracts with food people. I do my due diligence on everything, and I try to guide them every day on things that that are very important to the business. I mean, if I see a trend coming, I try to attack it, and I try to take advantage of it and pass it along to the franchisees, and that's what they're paying me for. I just want them to show up and make a great taco and make my customers, which are great fans, I have a lot of fans, I want them to be happy, and we're all happy.
Now, if I come in and I'm your franchisee, can I make modifications to the recipes, or do you give me suggestions, or what kind of control does a and not necessarily you, but generally speaking, do all franchisors have rules like this?
Well, the way we do that, we approach that with, if someone comes up with a great idea and they need to bring it to us and say, hey, look, Roy, I think this is going to work, and we'll look at it. We'll analyze it. We'll put it in a couple of test stores, and I think that's the way all franchises work. Even McDonald's or any of them, I mean, Taco Bell, they stole a lot of things on the road. They had supervisors that were driving down the road, and they saw certain food items, and they brought it to the head man, which was Glenn Bell or John Gorman or somebody like that. But anyway, that's what we do. We look at this stuff, and we don't want them to go out and try it on their own.
Right.
We don't want them to put in, breakfast jacks, because Jack in the Box sells a lot of them. We want to look at it first. We want to test it. And if it's good for the whole company, then we will put it in all the stores, if it makes sense. Which we do look at that stuff, but we're very tight on things like that, because sometimes it's a fad, and we know it's going to be a fad. We just we don't fall for something that's an overnight come through, and then we have to take it out like Taco Bell's done in the past. And I love Taco Bell. I mean, I was born and raised there, really, but they had a lot of problems with things that their franchisees weren't very happy, because they had to put in equipment, and that was one of their biggest complaints, was they were always putting in equipment to manufacture that product, and then the product went away, and then there they were with a $10,000 or $15,000, $20,000 piece of equipment that they have to give away or just move it out of the building.
Right.
So, that's very, very important. That's very critical to a successful franchise, is keeping your standards up and making your customers happy. My biggest thing, one of my biggest things, is specialize in just a small amount of things. We have 16 items. And companies like Taco Bell have 60 to 70 items. Well, it's hard to train a 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old person and have them do a good job of that many items. But you take 16 items and you can train someone. When we first started out with Taco Bell, we had 5 items. We had a taco, tostada, bean burrito, frijole, and a chili burger. That was it. And we were experts at it. We were fast, too. And we had drinks, small drinks, and 10-cent and 20-cent drinks, 19 cents on everything else. And we made those items fast. And it was a taco stand, actually. Taco Bell was a taco stand. They didn't have any seating. They didn't have any drive-thrus or anything. They were just a taco stand, is what they actually were. And I was there cooking meat and beans. And so I know that consistency, because we only had 5 items, we could make them perfect every time. And it took 20 minutes to train someone to do that, instead of sending someone to a university like Whataburger and McDonald's has. I mean, they have to send people there for months and months and to learn how to do these different items, and then I think when you have that many items, you have a lot of room for and a bad product. If you have one bad product, if that person orders that, he won't come back because he'll go, no, their food's no good. They'll judge your whole business on that one product. If it's a bad donut or if it's a bad breakfast jack, they'll go, well, their burgers are probably no good either. And so right. I want to specialize. That's what makes people successful in the franchise business. If they just stay with what they've got and pay attention to it and promote that one item, it works. We've proven that, for 45 years,
Well, whenever I talk to folks who are in franchising, I see people who have franchises and they're very loosey-goosey, and I see people who are very strict on how things are run. And I guess you would consider yourself somewhere in the middle, or would you consider yourself on the strict side?
Well, we try to stay on the strict side just for their own good. I mean, we have franchisees come and, make suggestions and feel like we're missing out on things like that, but we do our best, to work with that situation, I mean, and some franchisees think their area, needs something special, and they're right. I mean, McDonald's, they don't sell. I don't even know if they sell hamburgers over in Russia or Germany or whatever.
Sure they
specialize. They specialize in other things over there. Right. I mean, like China and Japan, and there's areas like that here in the United States that like when Glenn Bell first started, he went to Florida and he sold tacos for the first month, and then he just about went broke. He started selling foot-long hot dogs. That was in probably 1960 something, and he had to sell hot dogs actually in the Taco Bells to survive, because those Florida people, they love foot-long hot dogs. So, it was just something that he had to do, I mean, Glenn was a real creative type guy, and he went broke a lot of times getting to where he was, I mean,
right.
And that's what we try not to do. Of course, we're very fortunate being in Dallas-Fort Worth. I mean, people love Mexican food, and, that's why I moved here, because I love the city and Texas, and so, but being successful here is pretty easy if you just pay attention, because.
Well, as we've done business together, we've seen some of the things that can be pitfalls. If I am considering picking up a franchise from somebody, maybe you, maybe somebody else, the state has these disclosure statements. And so talk about those for just a minute. Are those helpful to franchisees?
Well, it is. It tells once a year you have to revise that. That disclosure statement is required by the state and the feds, and you disclose what you're doing. You disclose how many stores you have, how many stores you've closed, how many. It just tells you exactly every year what you've done, and if if you're getting sued or if you're getting whatever, it just gives a franchisee, and it's very important for a franchisee to read that disclosure and have their attorney read that disclosure, because they can pick up on it, pick up things in that franchise disclosure that you may not like or you may not agree with, and so that's what it's for. It's to initialize you, and you have to hold that 14 days before you can actually purchase a franchise agreement. I think that's the limit. Anyway, I think it's very helpful.
So you're saying that it's probably helpful to have an attorney go through it so that you know what you're signing up for.
Correct.
And if you're going to start a franchise, certainly you want to make sure that somebody's helping you write this agreement, write this franchise statement, disclosure statement, so you cover all your bases?
Well, it describes what you're getting into, and if you don't want to get into that, well, then you need to go find something else, or there's no fine print, and that fine print's what you want to be careful of, and so I think it's a good thing.
Well, as we close, let me just ask you this. What one thing would you tell somebody who's thinking about picking up a Taco Casa franchise or a Taco, anybody, just 30 seconds to say, if you're going to do this, then X, Y, Z?
Well, look at your demographics. Your demographics are very important, and a location is very, very important. But your investment's very important, and the history of your franchisor. You look at him and you look at his franchisees. I always recommend go talk to franchisees, go talk to my franchisees, go talk to the people that have been with me for years and years, and that's where you really,
you see what
you
the history is.
you can see what you're getting into. It's no different than a doctor. If you're going to have an operation, you go find out if he's a quack, or if he's going to cut you up and not take care of you, and a good franchisor has a good history, and that's with any franchise, that's very, very critical, and that's where you can get your information from, is that franchise disclosure, and it's very, very important, and people need to pay attention to it. They don't need to just like something and say, oh, I love the concept, I love your food, and that's it.
Right.
They need to actually,
do a little due diligence.
Do the due diligence,
right.
Absolutely, and especially with a good attorney. And.
Well, thank you, Roy.
Oh, you're welcome.
I want to say thank you to Roy Upshaw of Taco Casa. What's the website?
Taco Casa, Texas.
.com.
It's going to be hopefully, yeah.
Well, that's what it is today. So
it is what it is today, but it's going to change.
So we want to thank you for coming by and visiting with us.
Thank you too for having me here.
Well, we enjoyed it thoroughly. So
appreciate you.
I want to thank Roy Upshaw for coming by, Taco Casa. And before you sign the bottom line of a franchise agreement, make sure you come talk to us. We're a lot cheaper on the front side. Until next time.
Well, that's a wrap, folks, and we want to thank you for listening to the White Hat Law Show here with Warren Norrid. To find out more about Warren, check him out at norridlaw.com. See you next time.